Today I want to tell you a story. 10 years ago, a few friends and I went camping in the countryside of northeast Hong Kong. It was already dark when we got to this village. There was no night, no one seemed to be living there, but it's a bit too well maintained to be abandoned. When we approached the village outskirts, we saw bloodstains on the ground, leading inside the village. So we went and investigated. No, it's not a horror story. We camped outside the village and had a great time. We never bothered to find out what that was. From hindsight, it's probably just feral dots. The point is, that village left a lasting impression in my mind. That village is Lai Chi Wo, a 400 years old Hakka village. People started settling here in the 17th century. So, this village actually lasts longer than the Qing dynasty, which was overthrown back in 1912. The Hakka is also one of the indigenous people who lived in Hong Kong before the population boom in the 20th century. The village was famous for its Lai Chi tree, which is where the lamp come from. But apparently they were all replaced by mandarin trees in the 50s. Because mandarins were more profitable. For a couple hundred years, the village thrived. They also formed alliance with nearby villages. At its peak, it said that over 1,000 villagers lived here. But the rest of Hong Kong started rapid development in the later half of the 20th century. The villagers began to move to the cities. By the 90s, there's nearly no long-term residents here, except for a couple of elderly. The villagers still come back, once every few years, maybe. They won't forget this place entirely. They were born here, after all. But what about their children? Their children's children? They will have little reason to return here, or even know about it. By all accounts, Lai Chi Wo was dying, which is a great shame. Not only because it is inhabited for the past 400 years, but also because it is a living demonstration of Hakka culture and history. In a few decades, this place might join the countless village ruins that littered the Hong Kong countryside. Luckily, it probably won't. For the past 10 years, preservation effort has stepped up. Projects were undertaken to bring visitors to the village. Charity and volunteers have recultivated nearby lands. 2 exhibitions were established to introduce the culture and history of the village to visitors. And now, Lai Chi Wo is part of Hong Kong UNESCO Global Geopark. Because of nearby unique rock formation, mangrove, and coastal life. Now, there is a ferry that runs during the weekends and holidays, so people don't have to hike 2 hours to visit this place. Remember the story I told you in the beginning of this video? When I say nearly no one lives here, that is entirely true. Although now, the villagers do come back more often, and there are volunteers who come here in the weekends. Still, doesn't change the fact that there's no long-term resident here. If there is no visitors by day, and no villagers by night, this place will fade away. Not immediately, but over time. We humans often assume things that have been there for our miserably short life will be there forever. That is not true. Without active preservation, things can and will be gone before you even notice. We already seen too much example. Of course, this is not a call to preserve everything that is old. We rate their value against society's interests, and some simply won't make the cut. This video is addressed to you, the individual. If you think something should have a place in our future, pay attention to it. Tell people about it. Show them how valuable it is, and why it should stay. Never assume something will be there forever. If you put it in the back of your mind, and think about it only when it makes the news, it's usually too late. A half-century-old folding palace still being in the same place will not make headlines. But it being taken away real.